Okay, sorry for the delay. Okay, so I don't know how long everybody wants us to go, how late we can go. With Hilchos Purim, obviously we'll try and keep it on more of the halachas as they're based more for women. But if there's something you want me to discuss and I didn't get to it, or I'm forgetting to discuss it, so then just post it, please. Just post that you want me to discuss it, and we'll discuss it. So first thing is the first thing that I think is worthwhile to discuss is Parsha Zachor for women. So Parsha Zachor is a mitzvah d'oraisa. It's a mitzvah from the Torah, and it's a question of why women are required to hear Parsha Zachor, if they're required at all. But clearly, the custom has become that women are makbid to go to hear Parsha Zachor. So what's it based on? So the question is it a mitzvah saseshas man grama, right? We know that mitzvahs that women are chayiv in that are only time to time, that come from time to time, that are time-based, time-related mitzvahs, women are potter from. So the question is Parsha Zachor time-related, since we do it once a year, I'm sorry. So is that required? Is a woman required in that? So you think, okay, so it's once a year, so they're potter. The thing is, it's not really once a year, it's all the time. It's just once a year is when the week before Purim is when we read it. So because of that, that's not a reason to not allow it. However, that some say that in the Sefer HaChinuch is the one that's lenient with this and says that it's really only people that go out to war that are required to know that we're supposed to destroy Amalek, and women don't go out to war. So since women do go out to war, so the Chinuch says that women are exempt for that reason. So bottom line is do women have to go or not have to go? So like we said, the custom is that women do go, but there are plenty of opinions that say not to. And then, even the opinions that say that women have to go, there's another disagreement that has to do with men and women, which is that who says that it needs to be read from a Torah and who says it needs to be heard in shul with a minyan, right? Meaning, who says that you can't just read the parsha in the chumash by yourself at home, which many poskim say is allowed. So since women is a disagreement whether they're even required to hear Parsha Zachor, and then there's a disagreement whether you have to hear it read from a Sefer Torah, so therefore women can certainly rely on the opinion that reading it from a chumash is enough, and they can do that by themselves. There's another option, which is you can go in the summer. So it's a little difficult to go out on Shabbos before Purim. So it's a little difficult. So you can go in the summer when we read it with the weekly Parsha. And then there's another way. The Magen Avraham says that you can go to hear Kriyas HaTorah on Purim morning before Megillah, for those that are going to shul. So it's right before Megillah is we learn from the Torah, and there, even though we don't learn the parsha that we learn on Parsha Zachor, but we do learn the story of Amalek attacking the Yidden. So the Magen Avraham says that that's enough to hear, to be to the mitzvah of reminding ourselves about Amalek. So therefore, you could do, that's another option too. Okay, so again, the best option is obviously to go to shul and hear it from a Sefer Torah being read. If that's too difficult, then reading it by yourself from a chumash is also okay. And if not, then you can hear it in the summer. And then if not, you can go to hear Kriyas HaTorah or whichever, or do all the above, whichever it is. But you can hear the Kriyas HaTorah Purim morning, and then that will cover you for the mitzvah of remembering Amalek. If you do go to shul, then have in mind that you're being yoytze the mitzvah. They usually make an announcement in shul, but sometimes the women can't hear exactly what's being said. What's being said is you have to have in mind with kavanah, and that you have to do. Truth is, you have to do that even when you're reading it from the Chumash, and certainly on Purim morning, you have to have in mind that you're getting the mitzvah d'oraisa of reminding ourselves that we have to destroy Amalek. Okay, so that's basically the dinim of Parshas Zachor. Machzis HaShekel. So if anybody has any questions on that, please post that now. If no questions, then we'll move on. So then we have Machzis HaShekel. So are women required to give Machzis HaShekel? So Machzis HaShekel is basically, most do it on Tainus Esther. So what you do is you give a half a shekel, 3 half a shekel, because it says Truma 3 times in the Torah. As a Zecher, that's the way they counted. That's basically the way Klal Yisrael was counted. And everybody had to give 3 half shekels. Right? So the question is, are women chayiv in that? Because really it's from men from the ages of 20 to 60. Men from below the age of 20, men above the age of 60, and women and children were not included in that count when during the times of the Beis HaMikdash. So since the Machzis HaShekel is really as a zecher for that, so then is there really a point in women doing it? But the minig has become that women do give the Machzis HaShekel and kids, to the extent where even a pregnant woman, many have the custom that they even give the Machzis HaShekel for even a fetus. The thing is, if you start giving Machzis HaShekel for somebody under the age of bar mitzvah or bas mitzvah, or for women, then you can't stop, because it has a din of a neder. And once you start giving that donation of the Machzis HaShekel, so then you can't ever stop. So therefore, if you started doing it, then you can't stop unless you thought you had to do it. Okay, but that's not the time for that, for those halachas now. But it's $1.50. Basically, it's a half a dollar. In America, it's $3 half, and that's what's given. And if you want to give. If you don't want to give, then don't give. But once you start giving, then you really can't stop. Can you use Meiser money for that? It's a common question. You're not allowed to use Meiser money for it, according to most poskim, because the rule is with Meiser money is anything that you're required to do, you're required to give, can't come from tzedakah. For example, if you want to buy a lulav or an esrog or tefillin or something like that with Meiser money, so then you're not allowed to, because you're required to buy it. It's only mitzvahs that you're not required to do, like giving a donation, then like a tzedakah donation, so then obviously that can come from tzedakah. If you want to donate svarim or prizes for people to learn better, then that's also okay, because you're not required to. That's a different subject for a different time. Fine. Matanas lavyanim, are women required to give matanas lavyanim? So we paskin that women are required to give matanas lavyanim, as they are required to give mishalach manas, and also they're required in the Sudas Purim, which we'll get to. But we're going in the order of how things go. So Parshas Zachor, Machzis HaShekel, Matanas Lavyanim. Really, so the halacha of Matanas Lavyanim is that you have to give to 2 aniyim 1 meal each. There's a lot of confusion between what Matanas Lavyanim is and Mishlach Manas. Okay, that's what we're going to try and clarify all the confusions that come up, and some things with the Chachamim, with their wisdom, or the Torah makes things, I want to say that it makes it purposely confusing, just because that requires us to learn and to concentrate, but the confusion causes confusion if you don't properly know the halacha. So Matanas Lavyanim is plural, so we're supposed to give presents to poor people. That's Lavyanim is plural, so therefore it's 2 poor people, but you give 1 present to each poor person for a total of 2 presents. B'shlayach manos is 2 presents to 1 person, right? Again, I'll just repeat it. Matanas Lavyanim is to 2 people, you give each one 1 present. Okay? For Mishloach Manos, it's 2 presents to 1 person. Those are the minimums. You want to do more, you'll do more. But the minimum, again, is Matanas of Yonim is to 2 people, 1 present each, and Mishloach Manos is 2 presents to 1 person. There are all sorts of verdict why it is, because ultimately it's 2 presents that each person is giving, based on the 2 good things that happened to the Yidden. 1, that they were saved, and 2 is that we were raised up in the eyes of the king, that we were able to do whatever we wanted with the Goyim. So since there were two separate nisim that happened, so therefore everything is in 2s, right? Which is also why you're supposed to drink, to not know the difference between Arur Haman and Baruch Mordechai. So the simple explanation for that is again, many people don't understand this, but people think that I have to drink enough that I start blessing Haman and cursing Mordechai. That's not what it is, at least the way the Mishnah Berurah explains it. You're drinking enough to not know the difference between the 2 miracles that Hashem did for us. Hashem did 2 miracles for us on Purim. That's clear throughout. That's the theme of Purim. There were 2 miracles. 1 is that we were saved, and 2, being saved would have been enough. But we became high up in the government where we were able to do whatever we pleased. That was a bonus. That was the cherry on top. So when you're drinking do not know the difference, it's not to again think that Mordechai should chas v'shalom be cursed and Haman should be blessed. That's not what it is. It's that you're drinking enough that you have no idea which miracle was the more important one, which obviously the more important one was Arur Haman, getting Haman out of the way. We didn't need to have the miracle of being upgraded in the Achashverosh's kingdom. That was just a bonus. So that is clearly less of a nace than the original nace, and you drink enough to not know the difference. But anyway, so since there were 2 miracles, so therefore everything is in 2s. There's two poor people, each one gets 1 present, and Mashloach Manos is 2 presents for 1 person. Okay, so that's Matanas of Yonim. And it became the minig, and it became the custom that we give on behalf of women too. So the thing is like this: how much is the minimum of Matanas of Yonim? So actually, this year comes out a very interesting thing, because we'll get back to that in a minute. But what's the minimum amount? So there's various measurements given in the Poskim. The basic one that we go with is what Rav Moshe Feinstein was quoted as saying, which is basically you want to provide a meal, the minimum meal for a poor person on Purim, but you have to do it for 2 poor people. So now exactly how much, what does it entail, a meal? What's the minimum amount of a meal? So Rav Moshe is quoted as saying is that basically what you need is a roll with something to put on the roll and a drink. Right now, again, this does not have to be bought from a restaurant and pay restaurant prices. It can be bought from a store. So you figure you want to give 2 aniyim, each one a roll with maybe a couple of slices of pastrami or turkey and a soda. Basically, on previous years, what we've been saying is approximately $2 per poor person. So you need to do 2 of them. So therefore, it would be approximately $4, which is actually a pretty strict interpretation of the halacha. All right. So, but because again, you buy, I don't know what the prices are now, which is where it gets more complicated. But basically, a roll and a drink was about $2 should have cut it. Nowadays, where anybody that goes shopping is well aware that the inflation is totally through the roof. From what I understand, it's at least 10% higher to live this year than last year. So therefore, we're going to have to raise the minimum rates of Matanas of Yonim. So figure you got to up it to at least I would say $5. But that's what I'm telling people this year, $5. Can you be? There are some that say that it just needs to be a shava pruta, which is a dime or a nickel or a dime. But so whatever money you're going to give, you're going to be fine according to many opinions, right? But $5 is pretty safe. There are some that say you have to give like a real proper meal, in which case you would need, let's say, $10 per poor person, because you want to give them some side dishes and maybe a dessert, which is not necessarily, it's not necessarily an accepted position. But there are those that do it, in which case it would probably be more like $20. But again, it's a meal for two poor people, right? Each one gets a meal. So I'm saying this year $5. Previous years I was saying $4. This year moving it up to $5. Right? Now, so those that are married, so the husband or whoever is going to be giving the matanas lavyanim on the behalf should make sure you have to give for any kid over bar mitzvah in the house for sure, and bas mitzvah, and for the wife. And many say kids that have reached certainly kids that have reached the age of chinuch, which would be, depending on the maturity of the kid, 8-9-year-old. So that each one you need to give, again, just using our measurement, $5 on behalf of each one to the gabbai. Nowadays, we don't go around on the Purim finding poor people. We give it to the gabbayim, or you send it in, or you go on a website and you pay your money before Purim, and then they give it out. They give it out to the poor people. They're not necessarily giving each poor person a roll. They're just giving them money, and then the poor people know that that their Suda of Purim is being paid for, and then plus, and that makes them happy, and that's the mitzvah of the day. But again, you have to just make sure that you're included. So to say, oh yeah, you give matanas of yainu, yeah, I gave $5. What do you mean you give $5? You got to give $5 for every person in the house who, okay, little kids are not chayiv in the mitzvah, so that's not necessary, right? So basically, about $5 for anybody from the age of chinuch and above should be given to the gabbai. And again, you don't have to give $10. It's $5 that's inclusive of 2 meals for two poor people. Again, 1 meal for each one. Okay. Can you take meiser money from matanas of yainu? So the answer is, like we said before, anything that you're required to do cannot come from meiser money. So therefore, you're not allowed to, for the basic of matanas of yainu, you are not allowed to use meiser money, right? But for anything more than that, then you're allowed to. Okay, so for anything more than that, you are allowed to use meiser money. So, and the halacha is very clear that one should spend more money on matanas lavyanim than on mishloach manas. I don't want to be the kanoi, the zealot over here to tell people that they have to give more money on matanas lavyanim, because people do spend a lot of money on mishloach manas. Whether that's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, that's a hashkafic issue. I'm going to try and stay away from that, because there is something to creating friendship and with people. So you have to use your seichel, but the bottom line is giving tzedakah is more important than the mishloach manos. So therefore, you should spend more on the matanas of yainu. Somebody's posting here, does the father need to do any kinyan? There are opinions. I wanted to stay away from that. There are opinions that say you have to do a kinyan, meaning you have to give it. There has to be like the women are actually, and the kids are actually giving the money. So there are some that say that, well, if he just gives it on behalf of the wife, then that's not really like the wife giving it or the kids giving it. They have to give it themselves, but they're not going to go to shul and give it. So then what you do is you give it to somebody else on their behalf, and then they pick it up and then they give it back. There are those that say it. That's not necessary. According to halacha, that is not necessary. The main thing is that each person in the house should just give the money and provide it to the poor people. Interestingly enough, how do you define a poor person? And this is actually quite an interesting halacha. But according to halacha, if anybody who doesn't have enough money in the bank to live a year is considered poor, which then basically comes out, as far as I know, is most people are considered poor, because most people do not have enough money to live a year in their bank account. Now, nowadays, things have changed because of salaries. This is going back 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, where they didn't have bank accounts and you lived from day to day, and that was the regular, normal way of living. In America nowadays, it's not like that. You have a salary, you're getting the salary. So maybe if you have a solid salary, it's not considered poor, but according to the strict definition of a poor person, it's somebody who doesn't have enough money live out the year. So theoretically, again, I'm saying this tongue in cheek, but theoretically, if you really analyze halacha, when a lot of people that you're giving them mishloach manos, you're really actually getting the mitzvah matanas of yanim also, because most people don't have enough money to live out the year. But we don't rely on that, and we give it to the gabayim who know the people that really need it, and that's how your yaitza, your matanas of yanim. As it is, Purim, as which any other Yom Tif, is a big day to give tzedakah, and you should try and give tzedakah as what you can afford. Once we're on that subject, another something that's very much misunderstood is that the halacha says that anybody who sticks out their hand on Purim, you have to give them. So people think that you have to give every single person who asks you for tzedakah, you have to give them tzedakah. So people are running to the bank and getting quarters and dollars and half dollars and whatever it is, $2 bills, you have all sorts of things. That's not what the halacha means. When the halacha says that anybody who sticks out their hand you have to give, that means that normally during the year, the halacha is that you have to investigate. When somebody comes to ask you for money, you have to investigate to see if they are really legit, which is really why, according to halacha, one person is not supposed to collect tzedakah. There's always supposed to be two people. Because two people, it makes it a much more serious thing. But the bottom line is that all year round, you're supposed to investigate to make sure you're giving it tzedakah to a legitimate source. On Purim, it's kala poshet yad nosim. Whoever sticks out the hand, you give without investigating. That's all that means. It does not mean that you have to give tzedakah to every person. When you have, let's say you have $100, you decide you're giving out $100 to tzedakah on Purim, right? Once you deplete your $100 and you've already given out your $100, then that's it. You're allowed to tell a person, I have no more money. You don't have to run to a bank to make sure you have dollars to give them out, because that's not what the halacha is saying. The halacha is just saying you don't investigate. That's all. So anybody that comes to collect money, you just give him without investigation. So when somebody comes collecting for yeshiva, so really many places can say that that's not called giving tzedakah to poor people, and you're not necessarily required to give them, even though the yeshiva guys that they come screaming and yelling and dancing and saying kala pashid yad nosim. It's not talking about for yeshivas. It's talking about for poor people that you don't investigate them. Even though halacha says that giving to a yeshiva is the equivalent of giving to poor people, because bottom line is if everybody had money and they paid their full tuitions, then the yeshivas wouldn't need to collect. So by giving money to yeshivas, then that's by definition helping out people who are poor. Okay, but that's all part of it. The main thing is to understand that when it says that whoever sticks out their hand, you have to give them tzedakah, that means you just don't investigate them. That doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. If somebody asks you for tzedakah and you say, I have no more, that's not the meaning of the halacha. Okay, so that's basically the halachas of matanas of yanim. Mishlayach manas, so that's the one that's really more pertinent to women. So women, yes, women and men and children have to give mishlayach manas. Again, children of the age that they understand. So everybody has to give mishlayach manas. Now, what's interesting is that by matanas of yanim, we're saying that it's the men are the ones that usually go to shul and give the money to the gabbai. Here, a lot of times it's the opposite, where it's the women giving out the mishlayach manas, and that's not necessarily coming from the men, right? But bottom line is the way we look at it is that's the family giving, and you give, but you have to make sure that you give enough from each person to at least one person. Again, mishlayach manas is not to two people. The minimum mishlayach manas is 2 presents to one person. That's the minimum, and that's all you need to do to be yotze the mitzvah. You want to give more to make more friendship, that's great. But it's the ikar halacha is just two to one person. Right? Now, the first major halacha that many people ask about, and it's really unclear where anybody got this from, is that people ask, does the mishloach manos have to be two different brachas? We know it's two different foods. Does it have to be two different brachas? The answer to that is absolutely not. It's one of the biggest misunderstandings in halacha that it has to be two different brachas. It absolutely does not have to be two different brachas. It has to be two different foods. It does not have to be two different brachas. Some people make themselves crazy. I got shahakals and I got mazonis. No, two different brachas, and that's enough. Now, what? But it's. I'm sorry, not two different brachas. No, two different foods that are not. They can be the same bracha. They do not have to be separate brachas, but they do have to be two different foods. So now you get all because everybody's trying to make their nice mishloach manos and do the shticks and do these type of things, be creativity, which is all fine. Baruch Hashem, that's the way women. Right, Purim is pretty much a male-oriented Yom Tif, as are many of the Yom Tovim, because women, the vinegar is women don't drink. So this is a way for women to properly celebrate Purim, is to use their creativity to make nice and interesting mishloach manos that makes people happy to get and people happy to see, and that's part of the mitzvah. That is part of the mitzvah, and that's the woman's role for themselves in mishloach manos. And you don't have to listen to the men who say, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And not necessary. Yeah, and according to halacha, it's not necessary. But if that's what makes the woman feel as a part of the Yom Tif, then that's perfectly fine, right? Of course, this is what I tell men sometimes, just in a joking way, but they'll complain that all this food is going in the garbage and all the ribbons and bows and it's all going in the garbage. And I tell them, and all the food that you're eating is also going in the garbage, because most of the time it gets, I don't want to be disgusting, but they end up throwing up. So why do we have to be worried about what being served by the Suda with all the men? But anyways, nobody's gonna remember what it tastes like anyway. So that if you need any ammunition against the men who are complaining about mishloach manos, that's what I tell them in defense of the women. Okay, but anyways, not that they need a defense, but if that's what you need, so blame it on me. But anyway, so it's different. Everybody with the creativity is trying different things, but so the main thing is got to be two different foods. What's interesting is that Rosh Hashanah Auerbach says that it can be really the same food as long as two different cuts, then it would be okay, right? Meaning if you have a top of it, you want to make a chicken for somebody, and you have top of the chicken and the bottom of the chicken, dark meat, white meat, that would be, Rav Shlomo Zalman says, that's considered two different types, and that's okay, right? If it's two portions of the same food, then that's not okay. Two flavors of the same food would be okay. So a chocolate cookie and a vanilla cookie is also okay, right? Now, the only thing is you want to do at least one mishloach manos properly. So let's say you're doing mishloach manos that has a few candies in it plus a challah or something like that, because you want to get into the two different types of foods. That's fine, but really it's the point of mishloach manos is to make the person feel good that they're receiving something chashuv, right? So if you go over to somebody, to an adult, and you give them a Laffy Taffy and a soda, so the soda maybe make them happy. One Laffy Taffy is not going to necessarily make them happy, which is fine for the multiple mishloach manos that you're giving, but you want one mishloach manos to at least be chashuv enough. Again, this is a chumrah; it's not necessarily required, but you want to make sure you're going to make somebody extremely happy with at least one to be yod to the mitzvah for sure, right? So giving kids is no problem. You give them a candy, you give them a soda, whatever, that's fine. But to give an adult a soda and a Laffy Taffy, whatever it is, they may not say, "Oh wow, this person really likes me. They're giving me a Laffy Taffy," right? That's probably not going to make too many people happy, but again, so if you're already yotze your mitzvah, then this is all bonus, so then that's fine. So just make sure you give at least one at least chashuv mishloach manos and then everything else you can do whatever you want with it. There's a couple of things that come up. There's a couple of halachas that come up with Mishlayach Manos that people ask. I don't want to spend too much time in it because I don't know if it's really nageh so much to Hilchos Purim. One is for Tfilas Kalim, right? So people sometimes will give Mishlayach Manos in glass or plates and things that need tefillah. So that's a big issue in the Paiskim, whether first of all, whether you're required to tovel it before you give it, or even if you do tovel it, whether that tefillah even works, because really the owner has to give it, has to tovel it. Meaning, let's just spend a minute on it. When you buy, let's say, a jar of pickles, does the company tovel the pickle jar if it's a Jewish company? The answer is no, because for them, it's not called klei achila. It's only eating utensils that require tefillah. So for them, when they put it into the jar of pickles, they're putting it in there in order to transport you the pickles in a easy way. So therefore, for them, it's not considered klei achila. They don't need to tovel it. So the same thing with Mishlayach Manos. Many places can say, when you're putting the Mishlayach Manos onto the glass, you're not putting it there because for you it's achila. It's order to transport it. So even if you were to tovel it, you weren't required to. You really weren't required. So then in that case, it's not so simple what you're supposed to do. So that's part of the tumble if you hear about that. Now the mistake, again, it's one of the biggest mistakes in halacha, other than we already did one, that Mishlayach Manos, that people think Mishlayach Manos needs to be two separate brachas. That's one major mistake in halacha. The other major mistake in halacha is that people think that you're allowed to use a utensil once before you tovel it. That is absolutely not true. There's not an opinion in the world that says that. It seems like the reason why people make a mistake with that is because they say that disposable utensils don't need. And people think, well, disposables, because the reason why they don't need is because they're only used once. That's not the reason. A disposable utensil doesn't need tefillah because it's not long lasting. So since it's not long lasting, then it doesn't need tefillah, right? But anything long lasting, even if you choose to use it once, still requires tefillah. So that's not a heter for this whole tefillas kalim thing. Okay, if you have a shaila on this, exactly how to tovel it, you can ask privately how to do that. Glass is glass is the rabbanon. So if you're serving things on glass, then that you would not need to tovel. But the best thing to do is to just tell the person who's you're giving the Mishlayach Manos to that this was not toveled, and if you plan on using it long term, then you have to tovel it. If they plan on throwing it out, obviously they don't have to tovel it. Baking challah, this can come up also. Baking challah and cakes, which require hafrashas challah. So when you're baking cakes and challah, whatever challah bread for yourself, so if you bake 5 pounds, then you have to separate challah with a bracha. But if you're baking it to give away to people, then that really is not simple. Whether that you definitely have to separate challah. The question is, should you make it with a bracha or not? So if that's what you're doing, then you have a big shaila. So the simplest way to do it is to bake for you. Keep 5 pounds for yourself. Keep five pounds for yourself. Then for sure you make a bracha having it all in mind. Okay. If you're making bagels, yes, you definitely should take off challah. Really depends. If you're boiling in water, then really you don't have to. But from what I understand, the majority of it is baked, so then you should take off challah on bagels. But anyways, either that, you can either keep 5 pounds for yourself. Yes, 2 different types of muffins would be okay as long as they're different flavors. Yes, that's fine. And whoever has questions, just please post them on the chat and we'll try and answer them. So the baking challah is really 2 eighths. One, keep 5 pounds for yourself, then you can make a bracha. The other option is before you put them into bags, take all the challah and put them into a bag. Before they're in individual bags, put them into one bag, and that will combine them, and then you could make a bracha. Meaning you can make a bracha on the challah when you take off the challah with the das that you're going to put them when they're baked all into. They can still be in their pans, and you can put them all into one bag. A garbage bag would be fine. and then a clean garbage bag for the people that are receiving the sake, and then that would make it that you would need to make a bracha. If you're bringing your own rolls to somebody else's meal, yeah, that's because that's considered for yourself, so that's okay. The kazayas does not have to be bigger. No, one kazayas from the whole thing, from all the hafrosh challah is enough. Bringing rolls for everyone there, no, that's considered like they're all your guests. So then that would be fine. You could make a bracha on it. Okay, I think that's basically it for the shilas that come with Mishloach Manos. If I'm forgetting something, then please post it. Okay, Tainus Esther. So it's important to know, because Tainus Esther is not as much as it's a fast. It's one of the fast days that we have to fast. It is different and more lenient than other fasts. So normally on other fasts, there are opinions that say you're not allowed to listen to music, you're not supposed to shower. On Tainus Esther, that is allowed. Okay. There's an interesting shaila that if a lot of people when they fast, the next day they have, and that night and the next day they have a hard time functioning. So if you know that that's going to be, and it's going to ruin your Purim, then you would be potter from fasting on Tainus Esther. Obviously ask a question. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. So that can bottled water or flavored seltzer be one of the foods? Flavored seltzer, I would say for sure. Bottled water, Rabbi Yasha says you should not use bottled water because there's nothing chashuv about water. Those Vas waters that are more expensive, that are more chashuv. Why exactly? I'm not sure. But if it's something that's more chashuv, then maybe yes. I would say to be safe, at least give one Mishloach Manos with something else like a soda or a juice, and just to make sure that you're covering all your bases. Because there are opinions that say that seltzer is nothing, it's just water, and water is not enough. It's not going to make anybody feel good. Okay, so getting back to Tainus Esther. But it's a hard day to fast, so people should know that we are more lenient to allow people to break their fasts. Now, what gets for women especially, what can get complicated is that really we don't break the fast until after Megillah, which can be quite late, especially with changing the clocks a week too early. It would be great if they changed the clocks the week after Purim, but we're changing the clocks the week before Purim. So according to the basic halacha, there's no eating and there's no tasting food before the Megillah. However, if somebody's not going to be able to listen to the Megillah, this applies to men and women equally. If somebody's not going to be able to listen to the Megillah properly, then they can taste a little bit, and that's it. The reason why you're not allowed to eat till after the Megillah is not because we're trying to extend the fast day. It actually has nothing to do with the fast day. It just has to do with that we're afraid if you're going to start eating before the Megillah, then you're not going to end up reading the Megillah. Sort of the same reason why we don't eat or drink before making Havdalah. Basically the same thing. Just happens to be that we've been fasting a whole day. But if it's going to cause somebody not to pay attention to the Megillah, then there's a little bit of tasting of coffee or something like that. It's okay. So a lot of times women are going to the second laning, which is a good couple of hours later. So you are allowed to then taste a little bit of food, and taste a little bit of fruit. Fruit would be okay, and even mezainis would be okay, but then that would have to be less than an egg's worth of mezainis. So that's certainly allowed, especially if you're hearing the Megillah a couple hours later. You cannot eat or drink during the Megillah itself. No, you have to pay attention to the Megillah, and eating or drinking is going to cause you not to be able to pay attention to the Megillah. Even if you're a good faster, you are allowed to, I'm not sure what exactly that question is, meaning it depends if you can eat, you can taste, if you feel you're going to need it in order to properly concentrate by davening Ma'ariv and by the Megillah. If you don't need to eat in order to concentrate, then you should not eat. Again, the basic halacha is that one should not eat or drink before hearing the Megillah. Okay? Now, Megillah, women are chayiv, like by Parsha Zachar, it's a machlokes whether women are chayiv or not, which is interesting because Parsha Zachar is a mitzvah daraisa. But Megillah, there's no doubt that women are chayiv to hear the Megillah, because of the rule of af, even though it's time related, is because af hein hayu ba'aseh nes. Women were part of the nes in Megillah. They certainly were part of the nes, and they were the whole nes. So women have to hear the Megillah, and there's no option, there's no out of it, right? So I discussed it. I think when women are waiting for the second laning, so what you do is you can drink a coffee, you can drink, and you could eat small amounts of food, not large amounts, but small amounts of food, and that would be enough. And yes, you don't have to feel guilty about that, that you're not doing the ikar halacha. Yes, you can make mashalach manos because you can't go to sleep. I would say you cannot go to sleep unless you can do all the housework, because the assumption is that somebody's going to remind you to go hear the Megillah. So housework and all that type of thing is okay. Really going to sleep would also be okay if you set an alarm, but it's not preferable to go to sleep because you never know about sleeping through alarms, or just especially the days before Purim are not exactly days of rest. So you might just conk out and not hear the Megillah. There's always somebody that asks that every year, that they slept through the night, and or they got up very late, way past any Megillah laning time. But but again, women are chayiv to hear the Megillah. If somebody gets stuck and they miss all the Megillah laning, so then ask a shayla privately. I don't think it's getting a little late to discuss all the eitzes for that. Just interestingly enough, there are places, let's say the push comes to shove, one is allowed to hear the Megillah over the phone or over Zoom, as long as there's no delay. Obviously, we try not to do that, but if it's necessary, then there are opinions that say that it's okay. Actually, there's probably more opinions that say okay than it's not okay, but we don't rely on that in lechatchila case. You do, when you're going to Megillah, you really do have to concentrate the whole time and listen, which is extremely, extremely difficult to do. But you can't miss any words. If you see that you did miss a few words and you weren't sure, then you can read it from the Chumash to catch up to the Bal Korah, if that's possible. But really, one should try and concentrate. It can be that to help you concentrate would be reading along with the Bal Korah from the Chumash. If you read along, then that would be okay. So that's now the second Megillah lanings that they have for women. So if you're hearing it in shul, just do whatever the minhag of the shul is. There's a big disagreement amongst the poskim whether the ladies are supposed to make the bracha or whether the Bal Korah is supposed to make the bracha. Certainly, if the Bal Korah didn't lay in the Megillah yet, then he makes the bracha. If not, then it seems like the minhag is still that the person laying in the Megillah makes the bracha, even though many poskim hold that the women should make a bracha. I know this is supposed to be telling you exactly how to do it, but if you're having a private laning in your own house, then I would say that the women should make the bracha themselves. If there's 10 women there, then one woman should really make the bracha out loud for all the other women. But if it's in a shul, do whatever it is that the shul does, because whichever way you go with this, you're going to be okay. I mean, I tell people if it's a private laning in a house, then the women should make the bracha themselves. Again, unless the Bal Korah is laning for the first time himself, in which case he should make the bracha. So concentrating on the Megillah is extremely important and extremely difficult to do. So again, reading along with the Bal Korah can help. But if bottom line is if you didn't concentrate and you end up catching yourself spacing out, push comes to shove, you will be yaitz the mitzvah. Now, if you miss the brachas, sometimes when are running late and they come and they miss the brachas, then you are still okay and you don't have to hear the brachas. If you came late and you missed a few psukim, that does not mean that you leave and go hear another Megillah. You don't have to do that. What you can do is you can start reading from the Chumash and catch up. Up till half of the Megillah can be read from the Chumash, right? If you're already already halfway through, then I think you're too late. If you're not fast enough to catch up to the Bakara, then what should you do? Then basically make sure to concentrate. That would be the best thing to do. If you didn't, then you'll ask a shiloh, but push comes to shove, you're gonna be okay. Okay, fine. So that's basically with the Megillah. You're not allowed to talk, even after, if those are in the regular laning from Shul. Most don't say the bracha, and private Megillah laning, they don't say the bracha. They add the bracha that comes after the Megillah, they don't say it. But in Shul, so what they do is they end up wrapping up the Megillah first, and then they make the bracha. There's no talking from after the Megillah till after that bracha. You're not allowed to talk. Okay, so that's just a small thing that people are not aware of. Sudas Purim. Okay, the Sudas Purim is a mitzvah for women, and women are required to eat the Su'uda of Purim. And it's preferable, it's maybe more preferable to have meat. Okay, so even though the women are driving around the men and all this type of thing, and they're running and coming on, bottom line is you definitely have to wash on Purim day as a Suda, no different than Shabbos, and preferably eat meat, at the minimum chicken. Right? If you can't, you can't. You can't wash. If you have to wash, but obviously it's people that have special diets, then that's a different issue. But it's no different than any other Yom Tov, and you have to wash, and you have to preferably eat meat. Obviously, the minhag is that women don't drink. A little bit of wine would be okay, but you're not allowed to drink wine with other people unless a husband is present. Drinking with other men is not allowed, or the whole year round, unless the husband is there. But again, make sure you have a Suda, and when you have a Suda, you got to have enough bread to bench. And that's part of the mitzvah of Purim. So if you're not sure, you're running around later on in the day, and you're not sure where you're going to end up, etc., etc. So then the best thing to do would be to wash in the morning. It's an interesting halacha, because we know that you're supposed to do all the halachas as early as possible. Which, by the way, also with Mishlayach Manas, it should be done as soon as you can in the morning, because we want you to do all the mitzvahs in the morning with Zrizim Makdim al mitzvahs. We try and do mitzvahs as soon as possible. So you should try and at least give one Mishlayach Manas. The rest of them are fine. The rest of them, you should try and give at least the Matanas of Yonim is being taken care of by the Gabayim usually, so that's not your problem. Megillah should be read as early as you can in the day, and at least one Mishlayach Manas should be given early in the morning to get the mitzvah. So really the Suda should also be done early in the morning, or as early as you can, but it seems like the minhag in Klal Yisrael is to keep the Suda for the afternoon. But if you're not sure if you're gonna have time, so sit down and wash yourself in the morning, and then you're okay. Many people make two Sudas. They'll make a Suda in the morning because you don't know what's going to happen in the afternoon, and wash again, which again, it's a day that you're supposed to be b'simcha, and part of simcha is eating. So two Sudas is perfectly fine. No, one Suda would need meat. No need both Sudas. Is there an Indian to say Tehillim on Purim? I don't know if this is a specific Indian to say. Yes, there's all sorts of vertilach about it. It's a day of it is a day of Kabbalah Satira, but there's certainly no loss in saying Tehillim and davening that day for Yeshuas. That's for sure. I don't know if this is necessarily a specific Indian to say. Now, Ala Nisim, a lot of confusion with that too. We never repeat anything if you forget Ala Nisim, not davening and not Hilchos Hamazon. But it's not so simple in halacha, because there are opinions that say that you do. We have the rule of Safek Brachas, so when you're not sure, so you don't repeat. So that's why we don't repeat, but one should make sure to say Ala Nisim both in Hilchos Hamazon and in davening, definitely. Oh, something else I forgot. There is an Indian to eat the first night, meaning after Megillah or whatever. You can't eat a Suda before Megillah, like we said, but there is an inyan to have a set table and candles lit for Purim, the Purim night Suda, meaning the first night of Purim. There is an inyan to do that. It shouldn't just be like a regular weekday. One is also supposed to wear, again, I forgot this, one is really supposed to be wearing Shabbos clothing for the Megillah. It doesn't seem like women get dressed in Shabbos clothing for the Megillah. So we can't go against what the minig of Klal Yisrael is. And the minig of Klal Yisrael seems that women do not get dressed up for the Megillah, but men certainly should be in suits for the Megillah. And also, there's supposed to be a meal, but there's actually, the Magen Avram says that the meal should not be meat. The first night, he says it should not be meat. And the reason for that is because he says people might think that that's the main Suda of Purim is the first night, and it's not. You have to have a Suda during the day of Purim. So he says by eating dairy, you'll know that that's not the proper meal, and you have to have the meal the next day. Yes, most certainly. You have to wear the suit by day and night. The day reading of the Megillah is the one that's the more important of the reading. You're required to hear both, but the day reading is Kabbalah, and not Kabbalah like that, meaning Divrei Kabbalah from Nach, which makes it almost a Daraisa, and the night reading is the Rabbanan, that the Rabbanan said we should also read it at night. So the day Megillah is actually more important than the night Megillah. And the tefillin should be on for the Megillah laning too, if that's possible. If the person can keep the tefillin on for that long, the tefillin should be kept on. Obviously, that doesn't apply to women. But the tefillin should be kept on. It seems like some people do wear costumes to Megillah. Women certainly, it seems like, would have more of a reason to it, because it doesn't seem like women get dressed in Shabbos clothing. I would say men should not. Men should be dressed in suits. That's covered for the Yom Tov. Oh no, we did not discuss the banging by Haman. The minig is to bang by Haman. How much to bang? Enough to make some sort of recognition that we're banging for Haman, but not enough to cause your neighbor a headache. That was basically where I would put it at that. So I guess it depends on who's sitting next to you or the people there. What else? So that was Alanisim. If you don't have a set shul to go to, actually, once we're discussing Megillah again, if you don't have a set shul to go to, and you're going to a regular reading, then you should go to the biggest shul, the one that has the most people, because the more people, it's called Raivam Hadras Melech, the more people that are there is a hiddur for the king. Yes, every Haman should be, the minig is that every Haman should be clapped. Yes, some places are in a rush, so they don't do it. They say do the first and do the last. That's all shtick. Bottom line is it says that you're supposed to bang by every Haman. So that's what you should try and do. If by the women's laning, the second laning, there's nobody banging Haman, then that's fine. That's fine. You don't have to go out of your way to do it. If your meal goes past Shkia, then you still say Al Anisim unless you daven Ma'ariv. If you daven Ma'ariv after Purim, then you can no longer say Al Anisim. So just make sure to bench before. The last subject is doing work on Chol Hamoed. The minig is that you're only supposed to do work on Chol Hamoed. Chol Hamoed. It's the same, sort of the same din, but work on Purim. You should only do work that has to do, that's for Purim. I mean, we mean by work, we mean malacha. You shouldn't be doing malacha that's not a Purim requirement. A non-Jew can do work for you. So if you have a cleaning lady in the house that wants to start on Pesach preparation that requires malacha, then that is okay. If somebody's doing construction on a house, it's preferable for the construction to stop, but if you need it to be done, then it's allowed if it's being done by non-Jews. If you have a Jewish contractor, then you should give him the day off for Purim. Those that do work on Purim, if it's not for a good reason, so it says that you're not going to see any bracha from that type of work, on Purim. Okay, I think that's about it. If anybody has any last questions, yeah, should you delay Ma'ariv in order to say Al Anisim in benching? I would say so. Don't miss a minyan because of it, but I would say that you should. Okay, so that's basically it. Everybody should have a Freilich and Purim. And okay, so what are we saying here? Women singing inside and people hear it outside is not a problem. That's fine. It's the men's issue to not hear the woman singing. I wouldn't say you should sing outside, but if you sing inside a house and people hear it, so then that's not a problem. I didn't say you're supposed to have 2 sudas on Purim day. No, you really only have to have 1 suda on Purim day. But what many people do is because they don't know where they're going to end up later in the afternoon. So if you're not sure, so what you do is you eat 1 suda in the morning, and then you know for sure you're good to go. So then later on, if you decide not to wash, then you're okay. But some people, because of that, end up having 2 sudas. They eat 1 in the morning to be yaitz the mitzvah, and then in the afternoon again, when most people have their main sudas. No, there's no requirement to have 2 sudas. There is a custom for some people to have 2 sudas, but the ikr is one. You have to have 1 suda at some point during the day. Okay. I don't know. We'll change the clocks next week, so I'm not exactly sure what's going to be with this year. If there will be a time during the week that works for people, I guess Mr. Jacobs can, I don't know, however this works, we can try and figure that out. And also pre-Pesach, Shiur, we'll also have to figure out something with that. Okay, everybody should have a good week and a good Tvach and Freilich and Purim. Have a good night.